And hello and welcome to Media Musings, the season premiere for season 4. It's
We
not
play loud music and it makes us feel, it calms us down.
Yeah. It's not Barbara, it's Babra.
Hello, Barbara.
Yeah. So I will say, in honor of the 4th of July, we are talking the most accurate.
Go on, carry on.
The most accurate war movie I've ever seen, Kelly's Heroes.
I just have one thing to say regarding it being the 4th of July.
Yes.
Happy Treason Day, ungrateful colonials.
Oh yeah, I'm celebrating with a nice hot cup of coffee.
Well, you threw all the tea away, didn't you? This is our marriage, by the way, folks.
Yeah.
This is what we're like.
Yeah. So I will say, with all the, so in terms of accuracy, it's more of, it gets the spirit of the military accurate more than anything else.
Yeah, the attitudes of the soldiers, I think, is very fun. It's very much there with, we were saying before as well, Good Morning Vietnam, weren't we?
Yeah.
It's that.
Though I will also say there is one glaring inaccuracy in terms of, how it gets things accurate. There is no private alphabet. Every unit has a private alphabet.
You're going to have to explain that one for the civilians watching.
Okay.
And for this civilian, please.
Yeah. So every unit I've been in, basic, AIT, and then when I hit my duty station, like even down to the squad level, like every unit has at least one insert rank here alphabet. Because basically you have at least one person who's got like an unpronounceable last name. and they're just called alphabet because their name has all the letters of the alphabet in some order in there.
Yeah, okay, yeah. I mean, this is a movie that's supposed to be based in World War II, so there's probably less sort of Polish and German names floating around in the American army at that stage.
Yeah.
But yeah, I can go with that.
Also, a lot less, considering how exclusive American immigration was at the time, also a lot less Asian names as well.
A lot less Asian names. There's going to be a lot less. The one thing that I quite like about this film, it's never once commented on, but I'm going to comment on it while we're talking about names and things.
Yeah.
There are several characters in this film who are quite clearly mixed race.
Yeah.
That is obviously for the Second World War not historically accurate.
Yeah.
Second World War, we had over here in Britain, it's quite a well-known story of US Air Force coming over here in the Second World War and kicking off because our units weren't segregated. And theirs were.
Yeah.
And they didn't like the idea of unsegregated military, basically.
Yeah.
So it's a tiny historical inaccuracy that I am willing to let fly, amongst many historical inaccuracies in this film, I might add. But it's one that I'm willing to let fly because to me that tells me they picked the actors because they could act.
Yeah.
And considering the fact that we're still like, how old's this film? It's at least 50 years old, this film.
It's like 51 years.
Yeah. So this film is older than both of us, and we're still having this discussion about casting actors in a role because they can act and not because of their skin color.
Or
colorblind,
or speaking of historical inaccuracies, cough, oddball cough.
Oddball is just a walking historical inaccuracy. Going at me. I love him. He's amazing.
Yeah. And yes, actually, even from the beginning, so Kelly's Heroes is basically a movie that likes to portray itself as a standard war flick / bank heist movie, but it's a satire. So yes, we are keeping up with our trend of starting discussions on genres. Like the first movie we've always it just happens. The first movie we discuss in any genre is always a satire on the genre.
It is, isn't it? It's beautiful. Yeah. But I think it says a lot about our expectations of genre that we do that. Because I think it's your sense of humor. I know it's mine. I like satires of genres because they get to the truth of a genre very quickly and very sharply, and there's no messing about.
Yeah.
Speaking of truths and truths that satires tell, can I point out also, I'm going to say, because let's start talking about the film. Yeah. Every German in this movie speaks better English than the Americans. Can I just point that out?
Yeah.
Sorry, I just... Scummer! You're killing me, Scummer. Oh.
Yeah.
You're killing me.
Yeah.
Yeah, but basically, I do like it, and it's nice to actually see. We only get 2 speaking German characters in this film.
Yeah.
And
two German characters that speak in English.
I mean, characters whose conversation actually has any relevance whatsoever to the plot.
Fair enough.
People yelling orders in the background or reciting Sig Heils is not relevant, really, to the plot of a World War II film.
I mean, there are there are the couple of German soldiers kind of shooting the shit as they're walking out of the headquarters right before they instantly get killed. But
yeah, but you're not writing a dissertation on what they were talking about, are you? Let's be honest. Yeah. And I do like the way the German characters are presented is very interesting, and I like it, and I want to talk about it as a first thing.
Okay.
Because the interactions with German soldiers in this film, to me, are a microcosm of an anti-war sentiment.
Okay.
What do they do when they meet the Germans? They don't point guns at them. They don't start yelling and screaming. They offer them a drink and offer them a cut of the take.
Well, actually, so, with the first German character, the Colonel, the movie, begins with Kelly having already captured the Colonel and, bringing him, to be interrogated by his sergeant, his staff sergeant. And instead of asking, it's set up to begin like a very stereotypical interrogation scene.
I mean, not really. He's not tied down. There's no bright lights. There's no. What's the word I'm looking? This is not an enhanced interrogation.
Yeah, it's not in it.
Let's say that.
But it's it's an improvised interrogation that hasn't gotten that far yet.
to be fair, American soldiers under fire, I'm surprised the colonel lived long enough for them to find the documents.
Yeah.
So even that is very... there's an attitude of, as much as Clint Eastwood has the reputation in movies of being the gung-ho character, he's kind of not. He's very... I think he very rarely, if ever, seemed fire in anger in this film.
But the staff sergeant, Big Joe, instead of asking about troop placements and such, he's asking about
hotels.
Where are the nice hotels? Where are the broads at?
Where are the hookers?
Yeah.
Which, for anyone who didn't get that, when he's asking about broads, he's asking about hookers. Just putting that out there. Because there's one great joke later on that I'm sure we'll get to, but you'll need a trigger warning before I repeat it, about the search for broads.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's this attitude of these guys have been in the field far too long. They are far too comfortable discussing hotels and women and sex while the bombs rain down on them, which is essentially what's happening. And can I point out, as a civilian who's known a soldier who lived in a situation where bombs were falling on them constantly, they really do get that utterly indifferent to the fact that there are bombs falling on their heads. Ring.
Hey, it's not my fault that the Taliban can't hit the broadside of an airbase.
Well, they learned from the Americans, so, they learned to shoot from the Americans, so you can only blame your predecessors.
Yeah.
And we all know Americans aren't that great shots either, so maybe just be careful. Sorry, that's a joke with Ring, who Ring's favourite thing while we were Skyping, while Ring was on deployment, was to roll their eyes when I would say, "What's that noise?" and go, "Oh, it's the terrorists," essentially. And I would be there, civilian in England, looking at this thinking, "Oh, hell."
Yeah,
I
pass comments like they're setting off fireworks again.
Yeah. This is the and to be fair, given that Ring knows where I live, it's probably more dangerous where I live on firework night than it ever was when you were on it. Yeah, scum, a friendly fire isn't when Americans are involved.
Yeah.
Yeah, anyway. I wanted to talk about the way that they approach the Germans, because it's this whole thing of they've been in the war too long, they've seen the horrors of it and everything else.
Yeah.
And you get that when the sergeant kicks off at the captain in the next scene. But what I'm getting at with this is they do what it hasn't occurred to the generals and the officers way back behind the lines to do, which is to sit down and negotiate and talk.
Yeah.
Which is a very pointed commentary on war and on the context this film was released into.
Yeah, because while this, is filmed and depicted as a World War II movie, set as a World War II movie, it's not a World War II movie.
No, this is a Vietnam movie.
Yeah, this is a Vietnam movie.
Yeah, by far. And once we get to Oddball, we'll figure it out. But this is definitely a Vietnam movie, even from that point of view of this is essentially a bunch of guys who are sick of war and want it over with. Now, this film was released in 1970, so we're talking post-Tet.
Yeah.
This was released in the same year as the Kent State Massacre. So for anyone who vaguely remembers the 60s and 70s, especially the 70s, and remembers the big news stories, that's the kind of, just after Tet, within a couple of years of Tet, same year as Kent State. So most of America is against this war by this point, or at least there is a very loud group in America that's against the war at this point. And generally, and I think it's a very clever thing that they've done, is putting it in the Second World War, because even now, Americans are very jingoistic about their role in the Second World War.
Oh yeah. No, seriously, the Second World War is very much seen by the American people as the last just war we've the last good war we've been involved in.
Yeah, because
maybe second to last if you include Korea, but people just tend to forget about Korea.
Include Korea as a just war. Korea was a lot of things, but they're hard pressed to call it just. I think. I would say that just from a point of view of this, and the Americans are not going to like me, so deal with it.
Yeah.
America did not win the Second World War. America was caught on the hop, took a flesh wound, and decided to go hell for leather. That's what happened. America was largely irrelevant to the Second World War. The reason the Second World War was won by the Allies was because of Stalin. Now, I don't like saying that. I'm half Polish. Yeah. You have to know how much it hurts me to say that.
Yeah.
But Stalin won the Second World War, not Eisenhower.
Yeah.
So just putting that out there. And Churchill took all the credit because that's what the British do. Sorry.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the historical aspect of it. You were talking about names. Private Barbara.
Yeah.
Is there a Private Barbara in every unit too?
Not that I'm aware of. I'm guessing that's the closest we get to a private alphabet, because it's not pronounced Barbara. It's pronounced Barbara.
Shut up, Barbara.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I just wanted to say that. This whole thing now. I'm sorry, Scubby, you're determined to just kill me today, aren't you? Yes, the only time Churchill fought on the beaches we tried to get out of a fucking deck chair. You're not wrong. The dude was actually. Have we agreed on next week's film?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Next week there will be discussion about Churchill as well, which will be very fun. The spoiler alert: the dude was a raving alcoholic. He was a drunk.
Though I will say, there was a Churchill fighting on the beaches. It just wasn't Winston.
Yeah. Okay.
And cough, Mad Jack, Churchill, cough.
Yeah. No comment. But yeah, there is a very dark undertone to this film.
Yeah.
And because we're getting to there in the plot development, I have to point it out: the lead bars, the gold bars. The Nazi gold.
Yes.
It's never once commented on where that gold came from.
Yeah. And those who know their history know where it most likely came from.
Yeah, there is a comment passed that it's been brought by train into France.
Yeah.
The thing is, it probably went by train into Germany. Probably still in people's heads.
Yeah.
So that's a bit gross.
Yeah.
Which kind of makes the whole film very dark and. But the gold is very pointedly not stamped.
Yes.
Most Nazi gold was stamped with either the eagle or the swastika. And there's still a lot of it in Swiss accounts that no one can get access to. Because the Swiss, say what you want about the Swiss, they are very deliberately, they will protect your assets for you long after you are dead. As long as your account's paid for, your assets are safe. No matter who you are. As much as it's irritating sometimes. Because we know there are so many stolen artifacts in Swiss lock vaults and accounts that
which actually
you can't get access to.
The movie does make a mention of that. Because the whole reason Crap Game, who we'll get to, joins, comes along, is he's looking after his investment because Switzerland's only 100 miles that way.
Yeah. So the comment is passed, and there is an understanding of the kind of broader geopolitics. But it is very cleverly done.
Yeah.
To kind of... It's really difficult for me to talk about the history of the Second World War when I talk about this film, because I know this film is not really about the Second World War.
Yeah.
Equally, it's really difficult for me to talk about this film in reference to Vietnam, because it's based in the Second World War and it's a comedy.
Yeah.
We have the same issue with Good Morning Vietnam, but at least that's based in the same location. It's satirizing.
Yeah.
Historically and spatially. But this film is very much in the tradition of Good Morning Vietnam.
Yeah.
I will say that. And I will say I think it's probably a better satire than Good Morning Vietnam, because it's got those levels of complexity to it. And I do think in general it's just Clint Eastwood's sense of humor, isn't it? The guy's just such a deadpan.
And it's a smart and subtle satire.
It is. I would say it's quite funny because the joke is made in the film. It's a spaghetti western.
Yeah.
But it's to me, it's almost a satire of Green Beret.
Yeah.
Because Green Berets was the first Vietnam War film. It was a propaganda piece.
Yeah.
It's a famous Western actor in there, John Wayne.
Yeah.
It's utterly ridiculous. Like, the historical inaccuracies are nonsense. Like, the sun rises in the wrong place in one of the shots. And it's just madness. The whole film is just, I've only ever managed to get through Green Berets drunk.
Yeah.
Even when I was an undergrad and had to watch it, I played a drinking game to get through it because it was horrible.
Yeah.
It's just really bad. But this, to me, feels like a satire of the bad Vietnam War film that borrows from the tradition of the Western. Because the Vietnam War film is essentially a modernized version of the Western.
Yeah.
That's academically accepted.
And I can actually, I haven't watched Green Berets, but I can get, because, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, the last, movie of the Fistful, the Dollars trilogy, came out in 1966.
Yeah.
So at this period in Clint Eastwood's career, he is more, he is a famous Western actor.
Yeah. I will say as well, once we get onto him, we need to talk about Donald Sutherland's film history as well, film and TV history. Because there's an important point to be made. But we'll get there. And there's one comment that's passed during that interrogation that I just find utterly hilarious and is such a commentary on what we let the people we believe are heroes get away with.
Yeah.
When the Nazi soldier is standing up and quoting Geneva and the American says, "This ain't Geneva, sit down."
Yeah.
That to me
is that's
pointed jab at the Americans.
Yeah, that's when Kelly
offers him a drink.
Yeah, that's when after Kelly notices the lead bar and
Yeah.
does some enhanced interrogation.
He offers him a drink. Let's say offers him a drink, because he doesn't technically force him to do anything. He just offers him a drink and encourages him, because the guy probably thinks he's been poisoned or some shit.
Yeah.
Which, valid. But there are a lot of little jokes throughout this film that really point to the hypocrisy of the American propaganda machine and the American belief in their own ideological purity. And that's one of them.
Remember, the punishment for looting is death.
That's exactly what I was talking about. He says as he chases the yacht he's stolen from a Frenchman.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's hilarious. It's brilliant.
Yeah.
And it really gets to the point that for all the talk of ideological, the just war, the reasonable war, the war to save the Jew. Can I point out as well? There's something that really bugs me about the Second World War and the propaganda around the Second World War. The Allies did not know about the concentration camps until they broke the German lines. There were rumors and shit, but they didn't have any. They did not start fighting back because they knew the Holocaust was happening. The second, pretty much until Hitler led, they didn't know about the concentration camps. Maybe like a month before that, once they start breaking back across the French lines and pushing back, and the lines are breaking, that's when they start finding things out, and intelligence starts coming through. But even still, even the Russians from the other side, the Russians have been taken into these concentration camps, and a lot of them don't know what's going on. 40 years after the fact, I think it was only the late 90s, early 2000s, that there's certain things that happened in that era and shortly after that era where we knew for certain when it happened.
Yeah.
Because, and I'm talking about a very specific thing that if you know about Katyn, where the date it happened, it was a massacre. And they essentially took a large number of Polish intelligentsia officers, academics, and they basically pulled a Pol Pot. They rode them out into the forest and put bullets in the back of their heads. And for 40 years, they denied it and claimed it had been the Nazis that had done it.
Yeah.
And they were all, there are still people who believe it was the Nazis that did it. That's how strong that propaganda is.
Yeah.
So, a lot going on in the Second World War, but just to put that out there, when the Americans, the British, and the Russians were fighting, they weren't fighting for anyone in the camps because they didn't know the camps existed.
Yeah.
That is, that's a post hoc fallacy.
Yeah.
The camps were there, so we were in the right. Yeah, but you weren't fighting because of the camps. You were fighting because X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
Politics. Just putting that out there because that's a bugbear of mine. But this whole thing with Geneva as well is very... Sorry, don't mind me playing with my hair. I washed it earlier and it's not fully dry yet.
Yeah.
Because it's far too warm in this country right now. But not as warm as where you are.
Yeah.
So I wanted to point that out because the comment on Geneva and the penalty for looting is death. But also the comment is passed near the end with the German soldier in the tank as well. Poor bastard's just doing as he was told.
Yeah.
And the fact that he steps out of the tank in an SS uniform is a very pointed comment.
Yeah. And, does he even know what he's guarding?
Yeah, exactly. We'll get into that as we get further on because there's a lot of historical baggage around those comments.
And though I will say, because when you're talking about how the Americans are really friendly with the Germans.
Mm-hmm.
I have to mention this because it's more on topic now than if we'll than when we get to the end of the movie. But how at the end of the movie the movie makes a very poignant statement without any dialogue.
Yeah, when he sick hails and Eastwood just looks at him.
Nope. I mean, yeah, it's part of that scene, but the entire scene where it's cutting between the town celebrating being liberated, and then the Americans and the Nazi divvying up the gold.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Which again, I'm sure we will get to in more depth.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of commentary there about certain things that happened after the Second World War, going on in that little scene.
Yeah.
But anyway, from the beginning, I've written here, my next note is, and I quote, Captain lives the life of Riley.
Okay.
Do you know what I mean by the life of Riley? Is this an idiom that translates? No. The life of Riley is the Kardashian lifestyle. The rich man's lifestyle. In the middle of a war zone, this guy's got a yacht and he's wearing linen trousers and all in white, and the war's clearly not touched him. And it turns, the general's his uncle. He's a madman. The general's his uncle. That's how he gets away with it.
Yeah. He's just nipping down to Paris.
Yeah, he's just popping down to Paris for some bits, in the middle of a war zone. But there's two things this captain shows that I want to talk about.
Yeah.
A, the race effect of the sergeant and the captain. The sergeant's quite clearly, I think, possibly Latin extraction, maybe Italian-American descendant.
Yeah.
Looking at him.
I don't think it. I don't think it's. It's. Yeah, I don't know about Big Joe, but I know Little Joe has a line where he says, "I'm first generation Italian immigrant. They'd shoot me as a traitor."
Yeah. Big Joe is, just to look at him, he's not white.
Yeah.
But the captain is very. I want to say patrician, but that's an ancient Roman term.
Yeah.
He spends his time knocking shoulders with the Kennedys.
Yeah.
And the Rockefellers. He in a fight.
Yeah, he's probably straight out of West Point.
Yeah, Daddy bought his commission for him,
Yeah.
Or at least that's how it would translate if he was British. Daddy bought his commission for him. Also, just a little chat I'm having with Scummer in the chat. My point about the Allies didn't know is the soldiers on the ground didn't know what they were fighting for. And also the powers that be pointedly didn't make it a priority to liberate the camps during the Second World War.
Yeah.
They had the opportunity, as Scummer said. Quite rightly, they did debate bombing Auschwitz and then decided against it because it wasn't a military priority.
Yeah.
They could have bombed Auschwitz and ended it, but they didn't. It wasn't a priority to them at all. If you list the priorities of the Allies in the Second World War, the camps are so low down, they're on page 2.
Yeah, it was.
That's what I'm getting at with that.
Yeah, it was more about the geopolitical balance of power than anything else.
Even though the majority of the propaganda around the Second World War is on liberating the camps and everything else, that was by far a secondary effect of the Allies breaking the German lines. A good effect, but a secondary effect. The top brass knew what were going on, but the soldiers didn't, and that's something that gets repeated in a lot of wars, and that's relevant to this film because, again, in Vietnam, the top brass knew why they were there. The average soldier on the ground probably no.
Well,
he's there because he got conscripted.
Yeah. Well, actually, something about the Second World War and Vietnam is
we're started because of the French.
Well, yeah, we're and especially since of course, obviously, they came straight from D-Day, but they're there to get France's behind out of the fire, which is basically why Vietnam started.
Yeah, for the record, Vietnam started in 1912.
Yeah.
Google that if you
which is why American involvement in Vietnam started.
Yeah, the Vietnam War started in 1912.
Yeah.
When the French started to lose control of their imperial interests. Because the Americans have always looked after French imperial interests.
Yeah.
I really should be careful what I say if I'm going to apply for a green card anytime soon, shouldn't I? Yeah. But the thing I want to point out, the race aspect, there's a race and class aspect going on there. Of the sergeant is literally an average Joe. He's Joe. He's Joe Blogg of the street. The captain's, he's what we'd call he's a Bullingdon club.
Yeah.
Well, he's also very upper class.
Also here's the a point, one of the points I want to make about how it's accurate to the military attitude,
but not to the historical aspect. Yeah,
where especially since the captain is a captain. The captain is usually seen by the lower enlisted as the person who shows up, to give stupid platitudes about morale. Meanwhile, it's the NCOs who are getting the shit done.
Yeah, and it's the NCOs who are looking after the soldiers on the ground, which is the next thing. So I was talking about that, and I was looking at the difference between NCOs and officers. The officers in this, you never see an officer holding a weapon in this film, ever. Yeah. And I think there's the only officer you see holding a weapon is Clint Eastwood, and that's because he's been demoted. Because the backstory is, and we hear it, the order came down to attack the wrong hill, and someone had to take the flak, and he took it and got demoted to private.
Shit rolls downhill.
And he was a lieutenant, so yeah.
Yeah.
And it's an interesting point, because I get the impression from that demotion made that character.
Yeah.
Because he's an arrogant prick. And he's got the arrogance of an officer, but he's been brought down a peg or two, literally.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to see the power play between Kelly and Big Joe.
Yeah.
Because the whole time, Kelly defers to Big Joe, because Big Joe's the senior rank. However, in practice, Kelly is leading that unit.
Yeah.
Big Joe is kind of the pastoral support for that unit.
Yeah.
I hate to apply, especially to a war film and to this. If that unit is a family, Big Joe is the mum and Kelly is the dad. In very 1950s family style, which you see a lot of with Big Joe. Like, he listens to his men. There's the scene in the barn where he looks to all of them and he calls them all one by name and asks them what they think. And you get the impression that if even one of them had said, no, I don't want to do it, he'd have put his foot down.
Yeah.
Because his priority is his men.
Yeah.
And he just wants to get them out of there alive.
Yeah, I'm here to get you to Berlin alive.
Yeah. And the comment he passes of, these guys have only got so much luck. His priority is getting his men home alive. Yeah. He doesn't want to go home with a pocket full of what's the word I'm looking? Dog tags.
Oh yeah, I thought you were going to say medals, but okay.
He doesn't want medals either, but he doesn't want to have to pull a dog tag off anyone's neck. That's not what he's there for. He just wants to get them all home, and he does mother them a little bit. You see it.
Yeah.
You see him talking to them. One guy writing to his mother, and he's trying to. There's nothing there. And the way he manages them, he's very emotionally involved with them in a way I think you can only be when you've spent time with people.
Or when he finds out that the captain had gotten them 3 days of R&R out in the middle of nowhere with nothing to do.
Yeah. And this is why I hesitate to call him the mother, because he's also a misogynistic prick.
Yeah.
And very stereotypical in that regard.
Yeah.
But he is very... There's the comment that he passes when he's talking to the captain about getting them some R&R, where, what is it? My men are about to start freaking out on each other.
Yeah.
Which can be taken in several ways.
Yeah.
Especially as the preceding line to that is they need some broads.
Yeah.
So you can either take that as my guys are about to go stir crazy and start killing each other, or my guys are about to start an orgy.
Yeah.
With each other. Which is an amusing double entendre. That for a film from the 70s, that's fun, is that. And he's just a straight up guy. He's what I think they called in the 70s when this film came out. He's what they would have called a man's man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like in the terms of the military, okay. Oh, and actually I was about to say this. So in the terms of, military culture, Big Joe is the good kind of staff sergeant. The kind of staff sergeant that actually genuinely looks after his men instead of just, passing down orders from the officers and, giving out discipline.
Yeah, having seen you had both types of sergeant, I can say Big Joe is definitely the better type.
Yeah.
That guy's still on my shit list, by the way.
Yeah.
The other kind of sergeant.
Yeah.
Yeah. Still remember that fucker's name, but I'm not going to say it because that's not right. But I still remember that fucker's name. Speaking of Germans.
Yeah. Anyways.
Moving on. We then get to Kelly now putting preparations in place. And this is really good because Kelly's really good. Everybody who's ever studied warfare knows that you win a war not with boots on the ground or with guns in hand or with ammo, but with logistics. Yeah, can you keep your men fed, watered, and housed?
Like, I forget the exact quote, but like the paraphrase is amateurs at war study tactics, masters study Yeah, logistics.
Yeah. And Kelly's first move is logistics. That's what he does. He goes to the radio operator and he says, right, I need enough gear to last a unit 3 days.
No. Well, actually, his first move was going to Mulligan for the artillery strike.
Yeah. So, but already he's planning up for.
Yeah, and then and then he goes to crap game.
Yeah. And this is very good tactics.
Yeah.
It's not the greatest strategy, but it is great tactics for short-term warfare, which is what they're looking for. And what he's doing is tactics.
Yeah.
Would I trust Kelly to run an entire war? No. Because after a month, all his men will be dead and all his gear will be destroyed.
Yeah.
If someone said to me, you've got to follow this guy for 3 days, I'll follow him anywhere.
Yeah.
And I say that as a civilian.
Yeah.
Because for 3 days, I believe this guy can keep me alive because he knows how to deal in the short term. And he does only deal in the short term. That's because if you look at this film, there is never, until right at the end when they've actually got the money, any thought given to what happens next.
Yeah.
Kelly is very good at focusing in on the immediate objective.
Yeah, the attitude is we're already here in danger. What's basically the same amount of danger for a really good payday.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm sorry, $50 a month even in the Second World War was not great income. So they're not. They've got a point.
Yeah.
But he's very goal oriented as Kelly.
Yeah.
Whereas Big Joe has broader concerns on wider concerns, and that's why they make such a good team. Because Kelly's eyes are on the prize.
Yeah.
Big Joe's eyes are on the men.
Yeah.
And that's why they work well together. Those two together, I think. That's what when you're holding a strategy meeting, you need one of each of those guys in the room.
Like Kelly is the officer the captain should have been.
Yeah. But what's happened with Kelly, I think, because he's been demoted, he now has that understanding of what it's like to be a boot on the ground. And I think there's a lot to be said for the practice of promoting men up through the ranks into being officers.
Yeah.
Because there's commentary going on there about buying the commission and daddy's boys not knowing how to fight a war because they've never had to get their hands dirty. There is a commentary going on there about that.
Which is kind of...
It's very Vietnam.
Which is kind of funny. Well, it adds to the joke when the general's in his headquarters bitching about how the men don't have fighting spirit.
Says the dude in a silk dressing gown.
Yeah.
Oh, that guy. We'll get there, but that guy, holy shit. That guy.
General Colt.
I'm sorry, could he even pass a PT test? I'm not saying I could, but I'm not claiming to be able to control a war either. It's being very working class. There is a civilian equivalent to that is never make someone do a job you wouldn't do yourself.
Yeah.
It's why in civilian jobs I like managers who are willing to do the job I do. I don't get on with managers who've never done my job. Because I look at them and I think, who the fuck are you to tell me my job?
Yeah.
I know my job better than you do, so, And that's the attitude these soldiers have towards their officers, very much so.
Yeah. But so, on to Crap Game, who is the S1 guy that you want to be friends with.
Oh yeah, he's Big X, isn't he? If we're talking in Great Escape terms, he's Big X. He can get you anything.
Yeah.
He's the guy who can get you anything.
He's the admin guy that you want, because you always want it. So there are two people that you'll always want to be friends with. You always want to be friends with admin and IT.
Yeah. You can get your computer fixed and you can get your Scotch ration and you're happy.
Yeah.
I do love as well, which we'll get onto when we talk about Oddball, but the amount of Scotch he had stored there is just fantastic. I love it.
Yeah.
But he's a magpie.
Yeah.
This guy has literally no redeeming moment in this film.
Yeah.
He's a nasty piece of work. He's in it purely for the money. He's snarky. He's... There is no point where he does anything for anyone else.
Yeah. Though there is, he does come up with the, solution to the final problem of the plot.
He does, but he does that purely out of self-interest. And again, that's definitely a commentary on American international relations and American diplomacy. Americans come up with the solution.
Yeah, we make a deal. Deal.
Yeah. When it suits them.
Yeah. The best deals.
Let me just point out, America has never entered a war for anything but self-interest, and don't let them tell you otherwise. No country has ever entered a war for anything but self-interest. I promise you, because all wars, at the end of wars, reparations have to be paid.
Yep.
And that's all I'm going to comment on that. Otherwise, I'm going to start talking about Iraq and oil, and let's not go there.
Yeah.
But yeah. But I wanted to comment on that because he is... I think what I love about that character is that he's so irredeemably dislikable.
Yeah.
He is the hero you love to hate. They could not do it without him. He's the logistics guy and he comes up with it. But he's utterly ruthless.
Also, it is just good fun watching Big Joe put him in his place.
It is. But that's the thing. The character is... If you knew him in real life, you'd keep your hands in your pockets if you were talking to him. Because you'd expect him to... He's a jagman. He's a stereotypical jagman. He's the guy who takes someone out on a date and at the end of the date goes, oh shit, I don't have my wallet. Do you mind paying? Yeah. He's that guy. And then he disappears off to his car while you're paying and you never see him again. He's that guy.
Yeah. Tell me, what's gold going for on the Paris market?
Also, just for the record, while I was Googling around this, the gold that they found in that bank in today's money is worth about 400 million.
Wow.
Yeah. It was worth about 35 million. Did they say 35 at the time?
So it's $16 million.
Yeah.
And it was like 35 million marks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So into $16 million in today's money is about $400 million, accounting for inflation and everything else, and the value of gold rising. So if you had that weight in gold, you'd have 400 million now, because the price of gold has rocketed over the last 100 years. That's what happens. It's gold.
Yeah.
Gold is the smart money for anyone in a war zone.
Yeah.
No, you're not going to make me laugh again, Scummer.
I have opinions about the U.S. involvement in Iraq and Afghanistan, but I will not talk about them here because this is not the stream for that.
It's not the stream for that, but I'd love to actually hear your honest opinions now we don't have Upset hanging over us. At some point.
Yeah.
Because well, you know my opinions. But then we have him, we have Crack Game.
Yeah.
And again, even his name, even his call sign, he's a gambler.
Yeah.
But he's a very clever gambler. He likes to keep an eye on his investments.
Yeah.
Which was the funniest line of that movie, like for that bit.
Yeah.
And then we have his complete opposite introduced in the same scene. Yeah.
Yeah. The very image. I mean, yes, when like in the few scenes where he's actually wearing a uniform, you see that he is, that you see by his insignia, he is a sergeant. He's not a sergeant. He's a specialist.
No, he's a specialist because there's actually a line in that scene that gives it away. It says his CO or his NCO was killed.
Yeah.
And he hasn't reported it. And Crack Game's been collecting the whiskey.
Yeah.
Or the scotch.
Well, his officer was killed. But yeah, you see on his uniform he has a sergeant, like bottom rung NCO insignia.
Yeah.
But
he's also a walking anachronism.
Yeah, but also in in army terms, he wields the sham shield so well he might as well be Captain Freaking America.
Okay. What's that in civilian, please?
Okay, okay, hold on. I'm gonna do a thing.
Okay. Because I understood certain words in that sentence, and I understand all the words individually. But what? Because you can say a lot of things about Oddball, but calling him a patriot,
okay,
a la Captain America, is a bit of a stretch.
Okay, so here's the thing. It wasn't about how well, it wasn't about his patriotism. So here's the thing. I'm pulling up a.
Anyhow, you put a Terminal Lance cartoon up, I swear.
No, I'm pulling up the rank insignia for a specialist.
That's the thing, isn't it? It's the.
Let's see. Okay, open it. There we go.
You just found an old picture of yourself.
Let's see. Share screen.
But.
Okay. So you can see how the specialist insignia looks like a shield, right?
Yeah.
And specialists in the military. So the specialist rank is the highest you can, the highest lower enlisted before you're actually an NCO.
Yeah, so it's, I think I can't remember if corporals are NCOs in the British Army. Maybe the Lance Corporals are the lowest.
Yeah.
Are the highest. But he's basically, he's the highest lower enlisted.
Well, so the reason, being, the most experienced lower enlisted, specialists have a reputation for being able to sham out of anything, which is why the insignia is called the sham shield.
Oh right, okay. So he's the old timer in the job.
Yeah,
He knows all the tricks. He knows how to work smart, not hard.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the guy who you want to listen to.
Yeah.
If you're ever in a workplace, by the
like,
way. I know
the Olympics were shut down during World War II, which is kind of a good thing because Oddball would have been able to take all the medals in skating.
Yeah. I will say as well, just for the civilians, because this can be confusing to some people, when Ring says specialist, specialist is the technical equivalent rank to corporal in the American Army, or Lance Corporal.
So specialists and corporals are the same pay grade. The only difference between a specialist and a corporal is a corporal is technically an NCO.
Right, okay.
So the specialist is, the highest pay grade you get without actually having any kind of authority.
Mm. Yes, but there's only about 4 ranks in the law listed in the British Army, Scummer.
Yeah.
Because we've got privates. It's been a long time since I've looked at British Army rankings. Memory serves, because in the British Army, military police finish basic training with the rank of corporal. They get an immediate rank boost.
Which makes sense because you've got to
you've got to outrank. And I think you go from corporal to sergeant in the British Army, but don't quote me on that because it's been a long time since I've studied the British
Army. Fun fact. So if you're a dog handler in the military, your dog outranks you.
I should damn well hope so. For 2 reasons. 1, so you can't hurt the dog. And 2, the dog is literally responsible for keeping you alive.
The first reason is the actual reason. Because if you mistreat the dog, then you can get charged for
insubordination, technically, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is dishonorable discharge.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. So that's fun. Anyway, Oddball. Walking anachronism. Vietnam soldier in World War II.
Yeah.
Or at least the stereotypical unpatriotic Vietnam soldier.
So basically, for anyone who hasn't twigged on that this is actually a Vietnam movie, by the time Oddball's there with the Clue by 4 to whack you upside the head, this is a Vietnam movie.
Oddball is the Clue by 4.
Yeah, Oddball is the Clue by 4.
And he's just fun. He's a lot of fun. And he fits this unit so well precisely because he is the Vietnam soldier out of his time.
Yeah.
He gets it. All he wants to do is get by and wait for the order to go home.
Yeah.
He's Lieutenant Dan.
Yeah,
he's a Lieutenant Dan character.
He's
keep your head down, your mouth shut, and we'll all get out of this.
He lets his tanks, he keeps his tanks in perfect working order, but he lets them look rusty, so they don't send him into dangerous shit.
Yeah, all of his ammo is paint.
Well, not all of it.
Not all of it, but it makes pretty pictures and scares the bejesus out of the enemy.
Yeah.
And Oddball's very clever. I want to talk about Oddball's tactics for a second.
Yeah.
The pretty pictures and the loud music that calms them down.
Yeah.
This is classic psychological warfare.
Yeah.
takes a smart man to act the fool. And Oddball, I think, is the cleverest, most intelligent character in this film.
Oh, yeah.
By a country mile. He's cleverer than Kelly.
Yeah.
He knows, because even when Kelly starts talking about tigers and no. He knows how to beat the tigers.
Yeah.
Which Kelly didn't know. And he's the other side of the coin to Big Joe.
Yeah.
And all these characters are very much foils of each other. That's what makes this film work. It's a character-driven film, not a plot-driven film. You could take these characters out of this plot of hunting for gold and put them in a room together, and after 2 hours, you will have like 2 hours of Monty Python level comedy.
Yeah.
You know, they are very much the Four Yorkshiremen.
Yeah.
And it's a character-driven film, which is weird considering it's so plot, but it is a character-driven film.
Hold on, I'll be right back.
Yeah. So yeah, Scummy, you're absolutely right, but I can't put it up. That'll be the. I'm presuming you googled that for the non-commissioned ranks in the British Army. There's that. Now, these characters, it's far easier to look at them as a family unit rather than a military unit, because you see it there. You've got the oddball little kid who is not actually oddball. You know, you've got the spoiled brat. You've got, you know, the quiet kid, the studious kid, and they're all in there, and they all work together really well. And they're kind of the Waltons in a weird sort of way. They're not. See, rings off me alone now, and I'm forgetting my words. But they are really good. But the thing with the psychological warfare and Oddball is Oddball's tactics. If you look at them, he's engaging in what we would call enhanced interrogation, loud music, and psychological warfare. These are not tactics for a straight up point and shoot war.
Yeah.
And I do want to talk about the music and the lyrics to the two songs that are played in this film at some point. Because Burning Bridges is so beautifully used in this film.
Yeah.
Because it's used as a general track, but also it's used very pointedly and on the nose as they're driving through a burning town.
Yeah.
But then it's used at the end as well when they're running off with the gold, because they're burning the metaphorical bridges with the army because they're now all traitors and they've got to run.
Yeah.
So I love the duality of that song. Plus, it's a good song. It's a nice song. Would make a very good ringtone. I may set it as mine later.
Yeah. Well, also, Kelly, doesn't think about what if they make it, what if they don't make it, what if they need a bridge and can't find one. Yeah.
Whereas Oddball's thing is, let's invite the band to build the bridge. No. Let's get a bridge, Yeah. And now we have to talk about negative waves.
Oh, yeah. Won't you cut it off with them negative waves?
They hit me with them negative waves so early in the morning.
Yeah.
That's a commentary on the 70s. Yeah. Mysticism's big. He's quite clearly a stoner. He's quite clearly a hippie. That's a hippie commune with tanks in it. That is a more pointed joke about the duality of man than the word peace written on Joker's helmet in frigging Full Metal Jacket. With the peace symbol.
Yeah.
That is a more pointed joke about the duality of man than anything. Yeah. It's fantastic. It's hilarious. And that's what I love about this film as well. We're talking about, I think we like satires because there's a lot we can say about them on a philosophical level.
Yeah.
Oddball is just, I could write essays on that guy.
Yeah.
I should point out as well, while we're on Oddball.
Yeah. Donald
Sutherland plays Oddball.
Yeah.
Yes. So for the younger people who may watch this, that's Professor Snow from the... Is it Professor? It's Snow from the Mockingjay series.
Oh, like President Snow.
President Snow, that's the one. And also, he was the captain in MASH.
Oh.
He was Captain Pierce in MASH. Another film based in a different war, but based in a different war, but pointedly about Vietnam.
Yeah.
Which I think Scummer said earlier in the chat.
Yeah.
And he's never admitted it. I don't believe it was deliberate because actors play the parts they're offered.
Yeah.
But it says a lot about the bloke that he took those roles.
Yeah.
Although he does claim he took the role because Oddball made him laugh and he found it hilarious.
I think Oddball makes everyone laugh.
I think Oddball is the guy we all wish we were.
Yeah.
Like, he's the guy who can just lean back, smoke a joint, and chill, no matter what situation he's in. And he's in a war zone.
Yeah.
So we all wish we were that easygoing.
Yeah.
But he also knows how to get shit done as well. He's the guy you want to be friends with in the unit.
Yeah.
But yeah. And then there's so much to say about Oddball, but let's carry on with the film.
Yeah.
So we see Oddball, we see his thing, and then they're all split up again. Now, what's the first rule of D&D?
Never split the party.
What's the first thing they did?
Well, to be fair, Oddball did have a prior engagement.
What was he doing that first night?
I'm guessing some kind of hippie orgy.
Mm-hmm.
Especially when you see how friendly they are with the locals when you see them hanging out around their tank commune.
Yeah, very friendly with the local girls.
Yeah.
And, if you're going to go hell for leather past enemy lines, you may as well make a night of it.
And Crap Game, asks them what could be more important than than $16 million. And he says, you'll see if you come by.
Exactly. And we very much get the attitude of these soldiers that there's only one thing more important to them than money.
Yeah.
In that sense, they're very stereotypical men.
And that is okay. So, would you say that Oddball is? So, would you say that Oddball can be read as queer coded?
The thing about queer coding is, and we use that term a lot on this channel, but we misuse it a lot.
Yeah.
When you say queer coding, you mean a character who can be read as queer. That's not what that word means.
Yeah.
Queer coding is a very specific thing. Queer coding is when writers want to write a queer character, but can't get it past the censors, so they have to hint at it.
Yeah.
That's the specific definition of what queer coding is.
Yeah.
That's not oddball.
Yeah. Yeah. Oddball, like, is very flirty with everyone.
Yeah. Oddball is, I think, what they called in the 70s a metrosexual.
Yeah.
I don't believe for a second he's queer coded. I believe he's written with deliberately queer undertones.
Okay.
For the humorous effect.
Yeah.
And he's not. There's never any hint of that in this film. And to be fair, for a film where there are no women in it at all, unless you count ones that appear on screen for a second and then disappear.
Yeah.
It's one of the few films I can watch and not end up wanting to write fan fiction. This film is so straight, I swear.
Yeah.
It's really hard to find a pairing there. These guys, and as toxic as the masculinity is with these guys, the obsession with women, the war aspect and everything else, the relationship between all of them is very platonic and is very family oriented. And that's why I said when you disappeared, it's better you read them like a family.
Yeah.
And they are a family. You know, there's on the hillside singing about his dog, and the other one joins in by barking.
Yeah.
And you know, that's my dog impression. That's my other dog impression.
Yeah.
They're brothers.
Yeah.
And they're friends, and there's not a lot. I mean, even though I said Kelly and Big Joe are kind of the parents of the group, you couldn't even write those two. Can you imagine? I have a visceral no response to that because there's just no.
Yeah.
I would, aside from the undercurrent of them talking about women, these characters are entirely asexual.
Yeah.
There is no attempt whatsoever. And even Oddball's flirting he's not flirting. He's just, that's how he is.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't call him queer coded. I would say if you have a queer headcanon of him, you are totally valid. It's there. It is definitely there. You can argue it. But I don't believe he's deliberately queer coded. But yeah.
Yeah.
He is by far the most wholesomely feminine character of the group.
Yeah.
Even down to the out of Red's hairstyle.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's just, it's just how he is. Although there is a comment to be passed there of, if he was queer, would they have cared?
Yeah.
Do soldiers really care? Can you seriously tell me on a battlefield, under fire, your own artillery at your back firing, you really give a damn about the sexuality of the guy next to you as long as his gun isn't pointed in your face? Can you really?
No. Well, and basically, like the whole arc for, Oddball in regards to the rest of the unit. The rest of the unit is like, well, can we really count on him? He's weird, and then it ends with, yeah, he's weird, but he's reliable. He's got a good head on his shoulders. He's one of us.
Exactly. And it is very much, he's Rudolph. He's Rudolph. They laugh and call him names, but when he's useful, he's useful.
Yeah.
In that sense. Right, what's my next note? My next note is actually, I've got here, Tigers versus Shermans, Kelly flattering Joe. That's literally what I've written down. And this is what I mean by this is the closest you could get to a possible slash pairing. But Joe does not buy it for a second.
Yeah.
Joe is not easily flattered.
Yeah.
The dude cuts through bullshit so fast, it's unbelievable.
Yeah.
When he finds out about these Shermans. And he sees it. He knows Kelly knows something that he's not telling them.
Yeah.
Which is really irritating, and I think that's for me is the moment that's indicative of the fact that Kelly is an ex-officer.
Yeah.
Because he's not straight up with the guys. Because it's one thing to offer them 16 million split X number of ways, 800 and odd thousand each. It's another thing entirely to say to them to get to it, you've got to go through 3 Tigers.
Yeah.
Even with 3 Shermans.
Yeah.
Also, the names of the tanks that were used. Yes, World War II names, but also another Vietnam comment.
Yeah.
Now, I have to be very careful about how I word this. The Tiger is a very exotic creature, a very powerful creature that doesn't work in a pack and has a very distinctive colouring that would have been very familiar to anyone familiar with the language used to describe the North Vietnamese forces in America. Can I get away with saying that? I'm trying to talk around the fact that Americans use the slur for the North Vietnamese, and yellow is very close on the colour wheel to orange.
Yeah.
And then you've got Shermans. Now, Sherman.
Yep.
As in General Sherman.
Who burned the South down on his march to the sea.
Yeah. So what we're talking about is the ultra-American name and the name that is quite obviously a reference to the Far East and to Vietnam.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, was this film about World War II?
Yeah.
Were you still thinking, like, okay, but Oddball's the 4x clue, but that's definitely like at least a 2x clue.
Yes.
Which is why I wanted to comment on it.
Yeah.
And then we get this moment of friendly fire.
Yeah.
What was it I said earlier about friendly fire isn't?
Yeah. Where the airplane shoots up there.
Yeah. I do love the comment past of what are you going to do? Write a letter of complaint.
Yeah.
Like, you're behind enemy lines, guys. You've got to expect to be shot at by your own side.
Yeah.
There is no way that pilot could see their uniforms or their gear from that height. All he would have seen would have been what looks to him like a small contingent of Germans.
Yeah. Especially since they're not supposed to be this far behind German lines.
Yeah, best intelligence says that the nearest American to there is 30 miles away.
Yeah.
Or 20 miles away, because they're not all the way to
the city yet. Yeah.
Yeah. So you can't blame the pilot, but it's a moment. And then leads straight into this minefield scene.
Yeah.
Which is the one scene that doesn't fit in this film.
Yeah.
And I know why it doesn't fit. Do you know the story of this scene?
No. Go ahead and enlighten me.
This scene was not in the original script. This scene was put in because some asshole producer stuck his nose in and said there weren't enough deaths in the film.
Ah.
Which, for a comedy, duh. Yeah. But that's why this minefield scene was put in, and why it's such a weirdly... It just doesn't fit, does it?
Yeah.
It's all in the whole film. It just goes really deadly serious for like 10 minutes.
Yeah, and it feels and it does feel like it was literally just there
to shut someone up.
Well, no, to weed out some members of the platoon.
Yeah. Because that whole thing about getting through the minefield, the bombing, and the bridge, that essentially that's how they get rid of the band and all those other guys, because they leave them behind because you can't build the bridge in time.
Yeah.
And if you can't build a bridge, you don't get to the gold, so we don't have to split it with you. So they were a plot device. That's all they were. They were just there to justify getting to the bridge.
Yeah.
But then they need to be removed. So they're removed from the plot in that way because they're still building the bridge 5 hours behind.
Yeah, they're rebuilding the bridge because the bridge they built got bombed out.
Just got bombed out, literally while they were stood there because negative waves. And then you've got some of the members of the unit killed.
Yeah.
And it just doesn't fit. Now, it has its uses as a narrative device. Death has its uses as a narrative device in comedies. Darkness is... The thing with comedies is you've got to have darkness in comedy to enjoy the comedy.
Yeah.
If something's just a laugh a minute from beginning to end,
you're
not going to feel it as much. But this, it misses the mark for me. Because it's not organic. Now, don't get me wrong, units would stumble into minefields all the time.
Yeah.
That's what minefields are for.
But, because, in terms of plot, it doesn't go anywhere. It's just there.
Yeah. Also, it doesn't make a lot of sense. They are behind German lines. Why the fuck have the Germans put a minefield in their own territory?
Yeah.
It's not like they're being pushed back.
Yeah, and I mean...
The Germans are advancing in the war at this point. So there's no reason for them to have a minefield there.
And, I mean... And it's not like it's like an old French minefield, because because they're nowhere near the Maginot Line.
Exactly.
And the Germans got to Paris way before the French could do anything about it. Really.
So it's just nothing there.
Yeah.
Also, are you seriously telling me Germans are around that area all the time and no one's walked into that field?
So I will say there are two things where the minefield can kind of, like, it, not narratively, but meta-narratively can kind of tie in. One, this isn't a World War II movie. It's a Vietnam movie. And Vietnam is right by Cambodia.
Yeah.
So you could say that there is commentary on that. Also, the entirety of the movie was filmed in Yugoslavia.
Yeah, but
so I mean, but the minefield scene, like, narratively doesn't fit, and there's enough, anti-imperialist and anti-war commentary that it doesn't really add anything to that either.
No, it doesn't. And it to me, it really is just an excuse to kill a couple of guys off and see the sergeant's heartbreak.
Yeah.
And for what it is, it's a well-acted scene. It is a very well acted minefield scene. Because you see the moment, and again, this contrast between Kelly and Joe. Kelly looks there and he doesn't say a word, and then he just turns around and he goes. And it's Joe who's there, and you see he feels that.
And
those two guys left in that field, he feels that.
Yeah, and
then he says, but he doesn't just turn and leave. He says to his men, "Come on, let's go."
And little Joe's like, but what if they're just wounded? And Big Joe's, no, they're dead.
No, they're dead. Yeah, because he cannot conceive in that moment that they're not dead.
Yeah,
they may very well be alive. They may just be seriously injured or in shock.
Yeah,
but he knows there's no way to get back to them.
Yeah.
He also knows that he agreed to bring them on this trip. And he's feeling that. He's feeling the responsibility for that. So considering the fact that some arsehole producer forced them to put that scene in, they do make good use of it for Joel's character.
Yeah.
But it doesn't... I don't... That entire scene just sticks out like a sore thumb in this movie.
Yeah.
You'd think the spaghetti western parody would stick out like a sore thumb, but no. It's that scene. And then I've just got... And then on the go. Now, the comment that's passed before that scene, just to go back, this line of, and I think Scummer put it in the chat, to a New Yorker like you, a hero is some sort of weird sandwich, not some nut who takes on 3 tigers.
Yeah.
That, I think, is the only moment in the whole film where Oddball is genuinely afraid.
Yeah.
And there's a hint there, and there's a line there that says that Oddball has seen tigers before.
Yeah.
We know his officer's dead.
Yeah. Yeah, we know his officer was decapitated by a shell.
Yeah. Now, for me, that takes Oddball from being the stoner, terminal Lance, specialist character to being a PTSD veteran.
Yeah.
That moment, the look on his face and the tone of his voice.
And
that is beautifully acted, that line.
Yeah. And of course, you can't have a Vietnam movie without the PTSD veteran.
Exactly. And that's Oddball.
Yeah.
By a mile, it's Oddball. You would think it would be Crap Game because all he does is whinge.
Yeah.
But he's so focused on the money, nothing touches him.
Well, also, he's never, like, this is the only time he's ever been anywhere near the front lines.
Yeah, so you expect him to be a whiny little brat.
Yeah.
I'm sure as much as I'm a historian and everything else, if you actually put me in a war zone, I'd run in the opposite direction.
Yeah.
Mainly because, do you really think I can shoot straight? Look at this. You can see how, like, strong my glasses are by this.
Yeah.
So, I'm still a better shot than you, though, so don't laugh too much. But this is the whole thing, and Oddball is definitely the PTSD veteran here.
Yeah.
He's the guy who just wants to survive. And he always has been.
Yeah.
But he's been the comic relief until this moment. And you see the moment. This is the moment, I think, where Kelly, Joe, and Oddball understand each other.
Yeah.
They all understand that regardless of the money or anything else, the 3 of them, it's their job to get everyone else out alive.
Yeah.
And it's just a beautifully acted moment. Let's see. And then, so then we take them into the town. They're at the town. They get there.
Hold on. We're gonna. So, I want to talk about the scene with the bridge scene, how it cuts between the general listening in on the radio and the action on the front lines.
Yeah, there's a great line from the general that just sums that scene up, and it's "Be quiet, the game's on."
Yeah, be quiet, the game's on.
And to me, he is the stereotypical football fan trying to hear the Super Bowl on a shit old radio.
Yeah,
that's what he is. He thinks he stands. You know, he's a supporter.
Yeah.
He's not actually doing anything productive.
Yeah.
You know, thinks he's a big man. He's just nothing special.
Yeah.
The only big thing about him is his waistline.
I mean, and his not even his rank, because he's only a 2-star. He's only a lieutenant general.
Thank God you learned the British word for that. I can't take. I'm sorry. Dear America, I promise you, the rest of the world does not take any of your soldiers seriously.
Oh wait, sorry, no, he's only a major general. He's only a major general.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the way you can tell, one star is brigadier general, then major general, then lieutenant general, and then general. Easy way to remember that is be my little general.
That sounds kinky, and I do not like it. I do not like it. I mean, that kink is not okay. I don't kink shame, but that kink is not okay. Like, okay, if you're actually a soldier and you have that kink, I mean, you go out and fight wars. So quite frankly, if your kink was fucking a pie, I'd warm it up for you and hand it to you. But that gave me mental images I did not need of that guy, and especially in his silk bathrobe. And no.
But fun thing is that that mnemonic is actually taught in basic.
Listen, there are a lot of things that are taught in basic that you shouldn't tell civilians. You said that, and I literally just got the mental image of that guy in that silk robe, and I just no. That guy is a lot of things, but he should never be considered in a sexual.
Yeah.
No.
No. Speaking of his robe, like even his robe has got the star.
The epaulets on it.
Yeah, the epaulets on it.
And I love his commentary as well. He's so lacking in self-awareness. He's the general, and he's supposed to be in control. And yet he's got the brass bollocks to yell at his communications officer. You're supposed to be able to communicate.
Yeah.
Like, dude, you don't do your job either.
Yeah. Get the box of medals.
Yeah. Get them. That's just. And again, that's another thing. It's another Vietnam War thing, isn't it? Just going through the hospital, slapping a purple heart on every soldier in a bed. Yeah.
It's not just a Vietnam thing.
It's not just a Vietnam thing, but there are still soldiers who got purple hearts, and there's no record of them getting them.
Yeah.
In Vietnam, and they're still fighting the VA for their benefits and things because of it. Because they were given the medal while they were in a hospital, and then it was never written down. It was never recorded.
But yeah, like when you're even nowadays they hand out medals like candy when you're deployed.
Yeah. Yeah. Look, it's hard. It's easier to get a medal in most militaries while you're deployed than it is to get a badge if you join the Boy Scouts.
Yeah.
I say that as someone who's never been in either, but has observed both as an outsider.
But yeah, like I don't know anyone in my unit who was at a rank of E6 or above who didn't at least get a Bronze Star.
But a Bronze Star's a Medal of Valor, isn't it? But your unit wasn't a combat unit. I'm sorry, hold on, let me just... What did they do? Did they get a paper cut? Did they get a Bronze Star because they were big boys and didn't cry when they got a paper cut?
I got 2 Army Achievement Medals.
Yeah, but... I know what you did in the Army, and... You put up with a lot of bullshit, okay? You deserve those. But I'm trying to understand how a glorified paper pusher, not even someone who's doing the paper pushing anymore because they've achieved a rank where they don't have to do it, gets a medal for valor.
Yeah, but yeah, everyone, like pretty much everyone below that got at least an Army Achievement Medal.
I mean, you deserved at least one for that asshole sergeant you had to put up with,
but yeah, like I said, they like it's not just a Vietnam thing giving medals out like candy.
Yeah, although I will point out I don't know what you actually did to. Achievement to me sounds like a certificate. It's you did something good in your job, so that's fair enough. That just tells me you did your job properly. But something like a Bronze Star, a medal that is awarded for acts of bravery, given to someone who spends all their time in an office making PowerPoints.
Yeah.
Because let's be honest, that was your job.
Yeah. Rank hath its privileges.
We should move on before I go into another rant.
Yeah.
That's... Yeah. Wow. Yeah. But yeah, I know, but what I was getting at with the whole Purple Heart thing is there were literally, they'd have boxes of them shipped out to the hospitals in Vietnam and just hand them to the soldiers.
Yeah.
You know, so it's one of those things. And I was actually reading, I know someone who says that in Vietnam, someone they know got a Purple Heart in Vietnam because he cut his hand on a can opener. That's the level. That's why I am concerned about practices like that.
And well, and you know, speaking of like the cavalier attitude about medals, it comes up again when the general reaches the bridge.
Yeah, I've got a medal for you in the Jeep. Yeah.
Yeah, and of course, you know, the engineer isn't happy about that because now he knows he's cut out of the gold. Because, you know, no way he's going to be able to get any of that gold now that the actual army has shown up.
Well, if he'd have been a bit quicker.
Yeah.
But again, that's the whole point. That bridge being bombed was just to write them out of the plot. That's all that was. And it's that commentary as well between pay your fucking soldiers, medals don't put food on the table.
Yeah.
There's a definite undercurrent of that going on there.
Yeah.
Which is why I love war satires, because they're all anti-war, but nobody gets it.
Yeah. Though that, I mean, that's a lot of, like, that's the way a lot of, like, political satire is. Cough, pink houses, cough.
Mm-hmm. But yeah. And then we've got, they arrive in the town.
Yeah.
And again, Kelly's giving the orders.
Yeah.
Even to Joe, he's giving the orders.
Yeah.
And they find Oddball there.
Yeah.
What are you doing? I'm drinking wine and eating cheese. I'm in France. Why not? You kind of hear it, don't you? You know, that's my other dog impression.
Yeah.
There's a fantastic comment to be made about Oddball's ability to know his place.
Yeah.
And to understand that just because he's got the rank doesn't mean he's got the ability.
Yeah.
And again, if you could pick a kind of sergeant you wanted, you'd want Oddball or Joe. Because both of them do this thing where they trust the guys around them to do their jobs.
Yeah.
Even though they're the ones with the rank.
Yeah, you know, comes a bit later after the Sherman gets disabled. But, you know, I just drive tanks. I don't know anything about what makes them run.
Yeah. Once the Sherman's been disabled.
Yeah.
And that's the bit I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And the best leaders know how to get the best out of their people.
Yeah.
Oddball clearly knows how to do that. Oddball is very good at not just getting the best out of his guys, but letting his guys give him their best.
Yeah.
We've all had that asshole manager, the asshole supervisor, the asshole NCO who is constantly breathing down your neck.
Yeah.
Who thinks they can do your job better than you can. And it's like, well, okay, if you think you can do my job better than I can, you do it then, asshole. Oddball doesn't do that. Because Oddball knows if he touches the engine, it's going to go bang.
Yeah.
And we even see that to the point where he buys the Tiger and it's leaking fuel.
Yeah.
And his mechanic looks at him, is fucking insane. There's leaking fuel everywhere. And Oddball just, but we all know that idiot
I understand the uniforms, but why did we have to buy this piece of junk?
It's the military equivalent of if you know anything at all about cars and you've ever seen someone buy a car and they don't know shit.
Yeah.
That's what's going on in that scene, and it's beautiful. It's amazing. It's fantastic. I love it.
But I mean, and of course the Sherman had to be disabled because otherwise we wouldn't have had the tank scene.
Yeah. And the tank scene is fantastic, and I've got lots of notes on this.
Yeah.
First of all, the guy in the tank is SS.
Yeah.
This is important because the colonel at the beginning was not SS. If you look at his uniform, it's different. The guy at the beginning was admin.
Yeah.
This SS soldier is the stereotype. When we talk about stereotypical Nazi soldiers, high-ranking Nazi soldiers, the guys who were known as being
even down to the scar,
the fucked up eye. Yeah, I was about to say Hollywood and its fucked up eyes. You know, I've even written here SS fucked up eye arrow Bond.
Yeah.
Where do you think that quote comes from?
Yeah.
It's a shorthand for this guy's evil.
Yeah.
And he's meant to be. The SS unit, I mean, don't get me wrong, it's a nice looking uniform, but it's scary as all hell. That's why it's nice, because it is terrifying. It's a very well designed piece of kit. This is your cue for your fashion. Yeah.
I think if I did my fashion Hitler impression, the stream would be taken down.
Maybe. But yeah. It's designed to exude power and prestige.
Yeah.
It's the equivalent of US Army blues.
Yeah.
What he's wearing.
Or rather, the equivalent of Marine blues.
Yeah, Marine blues. Sorry.
Yeah.
You know, I always get confused with American frigging uniforms.
Well, okay, so here's the thing. Marines may be like crazy and a few grand short of a box.
They are well dressed though.
But they know how to dress up.
Yeah. Marines know how to dress. I will give them that.
Yeah.
But you could very well put Nazis instead of Marines into that sentence and it would go. They may be crazy and a few crowns short of a box, but they know how to dress.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what's going on there. But this SS uniform is supposed to pointedly, this guy's a nasty piece of... You had to be a nasty piece of work to get any kind of rank in the SS.
Yeah.
And the comment Oddball passes of, he's quite clearly a nut, otherwise he'd have been out of here 20 minutes ago.
Yeah.
They're expecting... What's the expression you have in America for, like, ultra patriots? The kind of guy who bleed to keep the flag red.
Yeah.
That's what they're expecting. And it's crap game, and it's Kelly who looking good. Yeah, but he's human.
Yeah.
But he's human.
Yeah. But does he know what he's guarding?
Yeah. Now, that line is very significant for Second World War history. You would not believe, anyone who knows anything about Second World War history and the trials afterwards, the sheer number of SS guards. For a long time, they didn't prosecute guards at concentration camps.
Yeah.
Because they hadn't physically killed anyone themselves. And it was only after one got prosecuted where they said, no, just being a guard was enough. You knew what was happening, therefore you were complicit.
Yeah.
And this is a bit of a commentary on that. And the problem is with that as well, most of the judges of the Nuremberg trials were ex-Nazis. They were Germans. They were ex-Nazis. So Nazis prosecuting Nazis, which is why a lot of the Nuremberg trials didn't go anywhere. Or if they did, they were fuckery little sentences that never got served.
Yeah.
I think 5-year sentences, 3-year sentences for being a guard at a concentration camp, for admitting to pouring Zyklon B into a gas chamber. A guy got 5 years and served 2.5.
Yeah.
That's what we're talking about. It was a kangaroo court. Well, it wasn't a kangaroo court because that's the opposite, isn't it? Because a kangaroo court is when they know someone's guilty and they want to throw the book at them. So it's the opposite of that.
Well, no, a kangaroo court is when they throw the book at someone innocent.
Yeah, so
on trumped up charges.
Yeah, so it is the literal opposite of that.
Yeah.
And there's a line there of, but does he know what he's guarding?
Yeah.
Do you know what you're stealing?
Yeah.
And that works both ways. Now, a lot of Nazis tried the insanity defense, tried the sickness defense. There was a Nazi who'd been living in the Midwest in America for years and years, and they finally caught up with him about 15 years ago. And the guy, they wheeled him into the courtroom on a gurney. He claimed he was dying. He was in constant agony to try and get out of this, these charges that they brought against him for being a Nazi.
Yeah.
That the Weisenthal Center brought against him. And there are witnesses who say, while the cameras were running during the court, he was in agony. He could barely move. He couldn't even lift his arm up when he fell off the gurney. As soon as it was over, he'd sit up and he'd be talking with his lawyer. The sick prisoner routine, basically.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of history to that comment that they put in Clint Eastwood's mouth there, or that was written into that scene. Of does he know? Does he know what he's actually doing and what he's fighting for?
Yeah.
Does anyone? And this is why, again, it draws that parallel between the Americans and the Germans of the soldiers on the ground. And this is particularly relevant to Vietnam. had no fucking clue why they were there.
Yeah.
And that's deliberate. And that's why, does he know what he's guiding? Does he know why he's there? Can we turn him?
Yeah.
And then you get the comment. And again, the German speaks better English than the Americans.
Yeah, and then and then you have the blatant spaghetti western showdown.
Like, even to Oddball, like, taking out the gun and turning it sideways.
And that's the thing. That's the thing. Oddball's gun is a Luger.
Mm-hmm. German weapon.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, like, so he's loosening the Luger in the holster as if he was, a gunslinger in a spaghetti western.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, and people don't like to admit this, but we know historically, when you're in a war zone, that tells me straight away Oddball's seen action before.
Yeah.
If I didn't know already from his reaction to the Tigers.
Yeah.
He's seen action before, and he's fought hand-to-hand with a German before. Because that's the only way he gets hold of that gun.
Yeah.
You kill the guy, you take his weapon, because you may just need it in future. That's what that's for.
Yeah.
He's killed someone for that gun.
Yeah.
And again, it all feeds into his backstory, and it's very subtly and cleverly done.
Yeah.
But this whole spaghetti western thing, that's the good, the bad, and the ugly. Even the music's the same.
Yeah.
Now, we did talk about this before the stream. The director did that deliberately. That's a deliberate piss take out of the spaghetti westerns.
Yeah.
It feeds into this whole genre of satire of it's taking the mickey out of what the westerns represented, which is what the war film came to represent, which is American jingoism and patriotism. Yeah. So it's taking the mickey out of that, and Clint Eastwood's being a good sport and joined in because he's representative of that. So it is fun. I did enjoy it.
And like I said, the entire movie being an anti-war Vietnam movie dressed up as a patriotic, jingoistic World War II movie.
Dressed up as a crime caper.
Yeah. Is it like that scene is like the pretty little bow of the satire.
And I think if you look at it, they use their guns once in a while in the fights and things.
Yeah.
They are very disarmed for a military unit.
Yeah.
They never deliberately kill someone.
Yeah.
Ever. Everything they do is done through negotiation, communication.
Yeah.
Strategy, tactics, logistics.
Well,
they pretty much get that far by being the opposite of what we expect of soldiers.
I mean, there is the battle in the minefield, but we have already covered why that doesn't really fit in with the rest of the movie. And then, of course, there's the assault on the town.
And to be fair, though, even the minefield,
they
don't fire on anyone. They're not really, it's not a gunfight, is it? They have to be careful and think things through to survive.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of spray and pray.
Yeah, there's spray and pray, but again, it's not deliberately designed to kill people. That's not what that's for.
Also, I'll say it, when the deaths look a lot more like the deaths in a spaghetti western than in a war movie.
Yeah, bodies sprawled out. One shot kills.
Yeah. There's
no blood.
Yeah, aside from the knife kill when they're assaulting the town, it's literally a shot of one of the platoon, shooting,
pulling the trigger.
Yeah,
and
pulling
then
the trigger,
and
then the Nazi suddenly has a heart attack and sprawls on the ground.
Yeah, they're not even realistic deaths.
Yeah,
That's not how human beings react to being shot. I promise. That does look like they're having a heart attack.
yeah,
But this is the point I'm making, that they get further than the actual army in the war
yeah,
by behaving in the exact opposite way than the army is expected to behave. Killing
yeah,
is the last resort to them. They only ever kill in self-defense, or
yeah,
like to the point where by the time they get to the bank, they don't have the weaponry to get in there.
yeah,
And it's this thing of it's the same reason the doctor carries a screwdriver.
yeah,
Because if they were killers on top of being traitors, on top of being money driven, they
yeah,
would not be sympathetic to the audience.
yeah,
And it's that lack of killer instinct that these characters have that makes them likable to a civilian audience.
yeah,
Their gut instinct is not to shoot. It's not to blow someone away. It's to sit someone down and have a conversation and see what kind of a man he is.
yeah.
It's to have, let's do a deal.
But
Um,
and then of
They're not
course,
killers, and that's a good thing, I think, and that's what it's getting at.
yeah,
That let's do a deal here. What are we killing and carrying on for? Let's sit down and have a discussion, see what we can come up with.
yeah,
But I will point out as well, it's quite obvious. There's a great commentary on the Germans. Quite clear, the two speaking Germans both mention Geneva,
yeah,
and that is fucking hilarious to me. Because if there's one thing that World War II Germany is quite famous for, it's war crimes.
yeah,
But then when the Americans commit them, we laugh it off.
yeah,
And that was what I was getting at earlier when I mentioned it as well.
yeah,
But it is very obvious here. And it is very... I do think it is a commentary on the fact that we don't hold ourselves to the same standard we hold our enemies.
yeah.
And there is an essay in that somewhere. I know there is.
And of
but
course,
I'm not the person to write it.
When they're divvying up the gold.
Yeah.
So here's the thing, and it shows that the Americans are kind of other side of the same coin.
It does, but there's also, I think, Kelly in particular.
Yeah.
There's the comment he passes of, we're not US Army.
Yeah.
Which is really important. Because that's the first time any character in this film outright states that they're traitors.
Yeah.
And it tells you, oh, you've been rooting for the traitors the whole time, really?
Yeah. Well, and so, but here's the thing. So I mentioned how it cuts between them divvying up the gold and the town celebrating outside.
Yeah.
So here's the thing. So the first few cuts are the different American characters, and all the people in the town are, waving American flags.
Yeah.
Then it cuts to the Nazi and back to the town. And did you notice the flag being waved after it cuts from the Nazi? There's a little kid waving a swastika flag.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm glad you commented on that.
Yeah.
That's something a lot of people miss. I know I missed it the first time I watched it.
Yeah.
There's a lot of ways to take that little comment.
Yeah.
For me, the kid has quite clearly been sent out into the street with the only flag he owns.
Yeah.
Now, there is a real darkness to the fact that this kid owns a swastika flag.
Yeah.
It's quite clearly that someone has been indoctrinating the kids in this town.
Yeah.
Um,
So on a meta level, that's the only time you see that swastika flag in this scene.
in this scene, but there is a swastika elsewhere in this film. Did you see it?
I probably.
Oh, it's a flag that contains a swastika.
Yeah.
If you look in the background in the general's
Yeah.
office, there is draped over something over the dresser. You know the swastika
Oh
flag
yeah,
with the
yeah,
black cross
yeah,
on it?
yeah.
Yeah. The Warrens, and that's the German Warrenson. And that's the only other time you see a swastika in this movie.
Yeah, and that's when he was talking about how he came in and he took over his counterpart's headquarters.
Yeah. Now, why would you keep the flag? Surely you'd burn it. You take your enemy's headquarters, you burn his flag.
Yeah.
Why is he still sat there? It's really out of place.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a weird one, is that?
Yeah.
Just something I wanted to point out.
Yeah, and so obviously, you know, there's the commentary on imperialistic looting.
Yeah.
You know, oh, we're here to liberate you.
Yeah.
While we take what we want.
Yeah. I have already said in this stream that I'm half Polish, haven't I?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's all the comment I'm going to make on that, or you'll get a hissy fit.
Yeah.
There's this, and don't forget, looting is punishable by death.
Yes.
And there's a lot going on in that commentary.
Yeah.
It is very difficult to explain what's going on there, but there is a why is it okay for the powers to do it but not for the men?
Yeah.
Why is it okay for the officers to do it but not the enlisted? Why is it okay for the French to want to do it but not the Germans? There's a the entire theme of this film is double standards.
Yeah.
And the double standards of the Allied powers.
Yeah, especially the last spoken line of this movie by the general. The general has the last spoken line.
Yeah.
You know, he comes in, all the people are, you know, flocking his car because Big Joe convinced them that Charles de Gaulle was coming.
They think you're de Gaulle. De Gaulle's not even in this war. Vive les Americains.
Yep.
Now we were talking about American jingoism.
Yeah.
And coming in at the last minute when you did nothing and taking the glory.
Well, I mean, that's the conflict with with the platoon and the larger army even before the gold comes up, is because they were going to get pulled back, so a different unit could come in, take the easy bit,
and then look good and well rested for the press photos.
Yeah.
And that's this whole thing. So really, all these soldiers are doing is taking their due.
Yeah.
Do I like that they stole Nazi gold? Not particularly when I stop to think about it, but it's a comedy. Yeah. Go with it.
Yeah.
I want to talk about Kelly and the Nazi.
Okay.
And the conversation in the bank.
Yeah.
My truck is loaded up now. We'll be going.
Yeah.
And Kelly says, okay. And there's this moment between the pair of them
where the Nazi does the Sig Heil and then turns it into an American salute.
Yeah. And that is so powerful.
Yeah.
Because in that moment, Kelly doesn't want to see the Sig Heil any more than he wants to see the salute.
Yeah.
But what he appreciates, that's the German repaying him for not killing him in his tank.
Yeah.
That's the German saying, yeah, we're both just guys on the battlefield here. It doesn't matter who I Sig Heil to or who I salute to. We're both just guys trying to survive.
And it's also...
And then Kelly returns it.
Yeah.
By speaking in German and saying to him, Auf Wiedersehen.
Yep. It's also it can also be taken as a commentary on what happened to a lot of German scientists and other high-placed German personnel after the war.
Yeah.
Von Braun.
Yeah, the Manhattan Project.
Space race.
Yeah. But there is something going on there that I think is a little bit deeper than that.
Yeah.
And it's Kelly's attitude towards the military. Kelly has throughout this film been disillusioned with the military.
Yeah.
Utterly disillusioned. He doesn't identify as American Army.
Yeah.
So the soldier gives him a German greeting. And you have to understand the Sig Heil in German culture at that time was no different than me going, hello. That's all. Yeah. People very rarely thought about what it meant. It was just it was a greeting. It was a handshake. That's all it was. But then he turns it into an American salute in an attempt to bridge the gap between them. The language barrier, if you like. He's attempting to bridge it.
Yeah.
But he's still doing it on a military basis. He's still offering the salute.
Yeah.
Whereas Kelly returns that by addressing him as a civilian, as a man. He says, Auf Wiedersehen. He appeals to his humanity, which is what he did when this let's make a deal. What kind of a man is he?
Yeah.
Appeals to his humanity. And in that moment, it doesn't matter what uniforms they're wearing. They're just two guys stood in a room saying goodbye. And that's it.
Two guys who've burned their bridges.
Exactly. They've burned their bridges and off they go. And if you listen to the lyrics of that song, there is no word in that song that talks about regret.
Yeah.
So people tried to warn me, but I burned my bridges and off, and it's looking forward. Always looking forward. It's not a regretful song at all if you read the words or listen to the words. And that's essentially what this is. This is a very human film for a war film.
Yeah.
And this is a very, considering it was made in the 70s, that's a very modern concept. It's one of the earlier films to take that concept and run with it. Of war is about the men, not about the grand vision.
And that's what makes it better than some modern war films I can name. Cough, Hurt Locker, cough.
Less said about that, the better.
Here's probably the only thing that will ever be said about the Hurt Locker on this channel. Anyone who's actually served in the military hates that movie with a passion.
Yeah. But this is...
Yeah.
What I'm getting at with the significance of it is...
Yeah.
The uniforms don't matter. They've both disavowed their uniforms.
Yeah.
And it's... This moment for me in this film has the same sort of energy as the Christmas Day football game.
Yeah.
In World War One. It's that energy of, it doesn't matter what our countries are doing. It doesn't matter that they're fighting and killing each other. We're just guys. We're just human beings. And it strips away the differences between them. They're able to communicate in each other's languages to each other on a level of we are just human beings. We're not soldiers. We're not American. We're not German. We're not this. We're not that. We're just human beings. And to me, that was a very dangerous ending for that film.
Yeah.
Because we still demonize the SS and the Nazis, and rightly so.
Yeah.
Of what they did, rightly so, we demonize them. But we forget that every one of those wankers in a black uniform who poured gas into chambers and shot children and committed all those atrocities was a human being with a mother and a father and a family and a life. And I don't like saying it, but their defense was they were just following orders, just doing his job. And that's the whole point, that there is no way that all of Germany truly bought into all of that entirely. Yeah. It's impossible. You cannot get an entire country to be that brainwashed. There will have been people who questioned it, and we have stories of people who questioned it because they were executed for questioning it.
Yeah.
And, you know, as much as your employer wants you to show up and be happy and to love your company, most of us know that the job we do is just a job.
Yeah.
We do the job to keep a roof over our head and clothes on our back. That's a job's a job.
And
that's what they say. There's no ideological bent here. It's just people doing their jobs.
And, you know, given how the markets turned after last year, employers are learning what happens when you have a disillusioned workforce who has bargaining power.
General strike coming.
Well, no, I'm talking about I'm talking about how it's currently a seller's market for employment now.
Well, let's be brutally honest. If we're going to apply this concept to the modern day, what we have currently, especially in the US, is an informal general strike going on. Yeah. People are refusing to take the shit jobs anymore.
Yeah.
And frankly, it's about damn time. This is why employers are trying to say to people, oh, you're lazy, you don't want to do the job. Well, no, don't treat them like shit. Don't put their lives at risk for minimum wage. And maybe you'd still have employees. People have learned what their priorities are, and their priorities are surviving. And their priorities are their family and their lives, not going to work somewhere for minimum wage and ending up dead.
Or mindlessly giving your life to guard a bank.
Exactly. For money you'll never see, that is not yours, and that doesn't even belong to the people you're guarding it for.
Yeah.
You know, what's happening right now in the American consciousness is essentially what Kelly went through in that film, or what we assume he went through prior to that film, of they don't give a shit about me, so why should I give a shit about them?
Yeah.
And that's what's going on. It's the human connection, and realizing that you can connect with people you don't even have a language in common with.
Yeah.
Because what I want to know out of all of this, where did Kelly learn German?
Yeah.
Think about it. He couldn't read the German documents, but he's clearly picked up a word here or there. So that's him making an effort to reach out. So in their own way, both of them were reaching out in that moment. And that's a beautiful image, but really brave for the 70s. Because we're only just really getting to that point now where people can look objectively at the history of the Second World War and say, actually, I mean, I've said it as, you know, these SS officers, they were human beings. That's a really, it's not a dangerous thing to say, but it sticks in the throat.
Yeah.
You don't want to think that these monsters are actually human beings. Because if you think that they're human beings, there's a chance that can happen again. Because there are human beings now. And it's really, to me, that ending, it's a redemption arc, first and foremost. for both of them. It's a redemption arc away from the war zone of two guys trying to move on and make peace. And if these two guys can do it, why can't everyone else do it? That's what's happening. All it takes is reaching out and trying to communicate, and you'll get somewhere.
Yeah.
Let's make a deal. And that's the message of that moment for me.
And quit it with them negative waves.
Yeah. But for me, it's also never forget, even with all the propaganda, no matter what their countries are doing or what their orders have been or anything else, the guy you're looking at who you're about to blow away is a human being.
Yeah.
And that's a really, really deep message for a comedy film.
Yeah.
And it's so telling, because we do our best to dehumanize the enemy in any war.
Yeah.
That you cannot make someone, there's a reason something like 99% of all shots fired in the First World War missed.
Yeah.
That wasn't because the soldiers didn't know how to shoot. They'd all been trained to shoot. That was because you cannot break it. At one point, basic training before they went to the front line was 6 weeks in the First World War. You cannot break down a human being's ability to recognize that the person they are pointing their gun at is a human being in that time.
Yeah.
That takes a lifetime of brainwashing. I don't like to say it. It's why Europeans think Americans are fucking insane. Your attitude to guns.
Yeah.
Your attitude to guns, not your personal attitude, but in general, Americans, from the outside to us, looks fucking mad. You care more about guns than human lives. What are you on? But it's part of your culture to have the weapons there and around constantly.
Yeah.
Whereas our culture says, no, nothing is worth a human life.
Yeah.
If you need to kill someone to defend yourself, you don't need a gun to do it.
Yeah.
Because all the gun's going to do is make you fire early. The killing should be the last resort. And that's the attitude here towards weaponry, which is not in America. People pull out guns because they argue over fuck knows what in a bar.
Yeah.
It's a different attitude. But that's what this is getting at. This attitude of killing should be the last resort. And killing for these characters throughout this film has been the last resort.
Yeah.
And they've never had to resort to it, because all the people they've found have been, at the end of the day, human beings who were reasonable, who were willing to make a deal.
Yeah.
And for me, the message of that is, well, if the men on the ground can do it, why can't the men in the back offices with their big cigars do it?
Yeah.
Be reasonable. When you're reasonable and you're ready to cut a deal, you don't need to fight a war.
Well,
it's a very anti-war message.
Well, and the thing is, the men in the back are disconnected.
Exactly. And
be quiet, the game's on.
Exactly. Because to them, it's nothing but a game.
And I think that's pretty good closing comments. I think we wrap this.
Anything else to add?
Yeah, I think we wrap this up pretty well in a bow.
We've done it again, though.
What?
We've talked about a movie for longer than the movie.
So, shilling.
Nothing to shill at the moment. I'm just taking a step back at the minute. I've got some other stuff going on. But I'm still on Twitter. You can still hit me up there. You can still have a chat. And I will still be a regular on Media Musings.
Yeah. Hold on, just checking something real quick. Okay. So, still 23 away from the embarrassing story stream. Hold on. And Godless Sewing is 27 away from his 100.
So if you're watching this, go subscribe to both of them.
Yes.
But also really, really subscribe to Ring, because I have so many embarrassing stories to tell and I'm bursting.
And if I get to 200 before Godless Sewing gets to 100, I will be doing a stream on either a hard cider or a beer, and Noodle definitely knows how hard those hit me.
Okay, so basically what you're doing is you're making sure you've got at least one new story for the embarrassing stories stream. That's what you're doing with that promise. So yes, do that. Let's get Ring. It only takes one drink to get Ring drunk.
Yeah.
And I tell you what, I'll join in. Right? If Ring gets to 200 before Sewing gets to 100 and does this drunk stream, I'll have a few drinks with Ring on that stream as well. And you all know what I'm like when I'm pissed. I know I'm a card, so you'll get 2 for 1 now.
Yeah, and so as always, there's Secular D&D. And next week for Media Musings, we will be covering Another Round.
I saw that movie in cinema. It's awesome. It's amazing. It's a brilliant movie.
And if you guys get me to 200 by this Friday, I'll make another round of my drunk stream.
I want to see another round. I want to see Ring talking about another round with a drink in their hand. That's so many levels of beautiful.
Yeah, so if you're watching this live, you have 5 days to get me to 200.
This is, yeah.
Aside from that, I'm in the preliminary getting ready stages of doing a response to Godless Granny and Pale Blue Mama's video on Jesus Ascending.
Okay.
If you haven't watched it, they did a there's a part where Manda talks about what would actually happen to a human body if it ascended into space. Well, the thing they forgot about is this is magic. So I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go through.
Are you gonna D&D it?
I'm gonna D&D it.
Of course you are.
Like, how far could someone ascend with D&D magic?
I suppose it depends on their race and class and what cantrips they've got.
Yeah. Yeah, but I'll so a lot of fun 5th edition nerding out and number crunching.
Wait, you're gonna build Jesus.
Oh, I've already.
You're gonna have to build D&D Jesus.
Oh, I've already built D&D Jesus. You fought D&D Jesus. Easter special.
Oh yeah.
You also killed D&D Jesus before he could become a lich.
This is valid.
But anyways, with that, we'll move to taglines.
Cool. Well, as always from me, take care, be good, and if you can't be good, remember, use your noodle.
And remember, the purpose of a storyteller is not to tell you how to think, but to give you questions to think on. Too often, we forget that.